This week's assignment is going to be to take inventory of the man that you have been in the past, as well as the man that you are currently today. Bonus assignment is if you purchase this book and read it along with me. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm going to be incorporating some of the concepts from this book into this week's assignment as well as this week's lesson because it is very insightful and powerful when we're talking about finding your identity, building your identity, creating your identity. And why is that so important? Because a lot of men are struggling with social awkwardness. You're struggling with what it means to find deep connection in relationships, whether it be in your friendships, whether it be in relationships with romantic partners. So this assignment for this week, as well as for the next coming weeks, is going to be focused on how you can find your identity and start to be confident in social settings, especially more specifically when it comes to relationships. So it's just a basic fact that we can all observe at this point. Collectively speaking, generally speaking, most men struggle with feelings of social awkwardness, with feelings of rejection and frustration when it comes to the idea of approaching women. When it comes to the topic of approaching women, a lot of you struggle with that. And the reason for that is that a lot of you are not connecting the dots between things like misogyny, patriarchy, and sexism that is actually destroying your chances of having successful and happy relationships, deeper connections with women. All these things, all these topics, all these concepts, all these ideals, they are interwoven, okay? They all connect to each other. They are not compartmentalized, they are not separate. Okay, the bigger picture of what's going on in the world when it comes to whether women feel safe and confident and happy and willing to talk to and engage with men, all these topics are interwoven into each other and they're going to play into your chances of success and your experiences, the quality of your experiences with women. And it's important that more men understand that. So we're going to start with self, okay? Because that's going to be the foundational piece in any part of your life, is going to be the self that you are bringing to the equation. How do you see yourself? How do you present yourself? How do you feel you exist in this world? And I want to highlight just a couple concepts from this book because, again, this book is amazing. I just started reading it, and there are definitely some great principles in this book that I highly recommend that you all read as well. For those of you that are serious about making the most out of your life and experiencing the best out of that. Habits are compound interest of self-improvement. Okay, that is just such a profound statement. Habits are compound interest of self-improvement. The same way that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. They seem to make small difference on any given day, yet the impact they deliver over the months and years can be enormous. It is only when looking back 2, 5, or perhaps 10 years later that the value of good habits and the cost of bad ones becomes strikingly apparent. When we repeat 1% errors day after day by replicating poor decisions, duplicating tiny mistakes, and rationalizing little excuses, our small choices compound into toxic results. And then he gives a great example of how if you're flying on an airplane, if an airplane was to just change its course by a couple degrees, you could land in a completely different state, a completely different city than originally intended. So it's just really illustrating the power of your choices, whether for positive or for negative. 1% adds up over the course of your life. And that is a great way to look at your life collectively, as well as in the day-to-day moments, like big picture, the forest and the trees. Like, this is exactly what we need to be thinking about when we're thinking about who we are and who we're showing up as in our lives as individuals, in our lives when we're talking about dating. It's important to take note of what are those little small daily habits that we are forming, whether we realize it or not, whether we know where we got it from or not. We need to realize that all these things are contributing to the person that we show up as and ultimately the person that we exist as in relationships, okay? A slight change in your daily habits can guide your life to a very different destination. Making a choice that is 1% better or 1% worse seems insignificant in the moment, but over the span of moments that make up a lifetime, these choices determine the difference between who you are and who you could be. Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. That said, it doesn't matter how successful or unsuccessful you are right now. What matters is whether your habits are putting you on the path towards success. You should be far more concerned with your current trajectory than with your current results, okay? And that's another thing that this book gets into that's really good, is that instead of focusing on results, we should be focusing on the systems. What system are you implementing in your day-to-day life that's getting you the current results that you're getting? So many of us, like this book says, we focus on our goals. We focus on, I want to be married, I want to have a girlfriend, I want to be, at this certain point in my life, I want to have a house, a car, X, Y, and the third. But it's like, okay, how do you get there? What are the systems that you are putting in place that actually helps you to reach that goal? The book highlights the fact that, both winners and losers, they have the same goal. Both the people that win and succeed and the people that lose and fail, like they had the same goal of ultimately succeeding. They had the same ambitions, okay? And they all put in the effort, probably some more than others, but we all basically, have the same goals to some degree. What is the difference between those that fail and those that succeed? Oftentimes, you could look at the systems that they are implementing. Another thing that he highlights is that achieving a goal is only a momentary change. So you achieve the goal and then you move on with life. Okay, life goes on. You lose oftentimes the motivation that you had in attaining that goal. So when it comes to dating and like you meeting a woman that you are attracted to, oftentimes once you meet a woman that you're attracted to, then it's like, okay, now the thrill is gone because you met the goal, maybe you had sex, and now the goal has been accomplished, so you move on. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of people are treating relationships. It's like, okay, the excitement is gone once I've achieved the objective. And ultimately, when we go back to that question of what systems are in place, then there's no system in place for that, right? When we talk about systems, I see it more so from a point of a lifestyle. What sort of lifestyle, again, habits are you developing? Someone that has a lifestyle of, being good for relationships, of being a good partner, a healthy partner, of being someone that's going to be able to sustain long-term healthy relationships, their goal isn't going to be to just, get in a relationship and then that's it. There are going to be habits and lifestyle practices that backs that up and that sustains that from day to day. A lot of people, they have a goal. Again, I'm going to get a girlfriend. I'm going to get in a relationship. I'm going to, do X, Y, and the third, maybe start a family. And you do those things, but you never really thought about the systems. You never really thought about the daily lifestyle habits that should come along in order to sustain and maintain those things. And so that's what this book is getting into. And again, great book. I'm going to be talking about it more from the standpoint of relationships and reaching those goals, more so again, particularly for men. Another point that he brings up in this book is that goals restrict your happiness. The problem with a goals first mentality is that you're continually putting your happiness off until the next milestone. Basically, you feel that you can't achieve happiness or you don't deserve happiness until you actually reach your goal. So I can't be happy until I have a girlfriend. I can't be happy until I have a family. I can't be happy until I make a certain amount of money and reach a certain point in my life. That's what the next problem is with being goal focused versus system focused, versus being focused on actually developing the identity and the lifestyle habits. Okay, because anyone can achieve a goal, and again, it could be a passing moment. Once you achieve that goal, great, you move on, life moves on. But what about the day to day after that? What about, the lifestyle habits from the moment that you had the goal to you achieving the goal to after the goal has been achieved? That's what we want to think about, bigger picture. Okay, so micro moments, the 1% small moments that are building up to the overall bigger picture. We want all of those things to be connected, especially when we're talking about building your identity and who you are for relationships, okay, for yourself and for how you show up in relationships. The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game. True long-term thinking is goal-less thinking. It is not about any single accomplishment. It is about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement. Ultimately, it is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. If you are having trouble changing your habits, the problem isn't you. The problem is your system. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Focusing on the overall system rather than a single goal is one of the core themes of this book. And again, why I highly recommend that you go ahead and check out this book. Habits are like the atoms of our lives. You may want more money, but if your identity is someone who consumes rather than creates, then you'll continue to be pulled towards spending rather than earning. You may want better health, but if you continue to prioritize comfort over accomplishment, you'll be drawn to relaxing rather than training. It's hard to change your habits if you never change the underlying beliefs that led to your past behavior. You have a new goal and a new plan, but you haven't changed who you are. You might start a habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with one is that it becomes a part of your identity. Once your pride gets involved, you will fight tooth and nail to maintain your habits. Over the long run, the real reason that you fail to stick with habits is that your self image gets in the way. This is why you can't get too attached to one version of your identity. Progress requires unlearning. Becoming the best version of yourself requires you to continuously edit your beliefs and to upgrade and expand your identity. This brings us to an important question. If your beliefs and worldview play such an important role in your behavior, where do they come from in the first place? How exactly is your identity formed, and how can you emphasize new aspects of your identity that serve you and gradually erase the pieces that hinder you? Your identity emerges out of your habits. You are not born with preset beliefs. Every belief, including those about yourself, is learned and conditioned through experience. The more you repeat a behavior, the more you reinforce the identity associated with the behavior. You prove your identity to yourself with small wins, going back to that 1%. Okay, the things that you choose to do in those small moments every single day, those little small decisions that don't seem to matter, that just seem like, oh, this is who I am. Like you are literally reinforcing your identity in those actions with those steps. He basically calls it a vote. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person that you wish to become. This is one reason why meaningful change does not require radical change, because it's the small habits that can make meaningful difference by providing evidence of a new identity. Building better habits is not about littering your day with life hacks. Habits can help you achieve all of these things, but fundamentally, they are not about having something. They are about becoming someone. So, again, going back to what he was talking about goals, okay? Anyone can achieve a goal. A lot of people, they get into relationships. A lot of people, they have families, but that doesn't mean that they're happy. That doesn't mean that their lives are successful because, again, who are they becoming? Like, once they achieve those things, then their identity may not necessarily be either prepared for that, tied to that. Again, maybe it was idolized because we live in a society and culture that oftentimes idolizes that and puts that on a pedestal. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, a lot of our identity is removed from our day to day, how we go about our day to day. Okay, a lot of times, unfortunately, we're on autopilot and we're just going through life, going through the motions because that's what we've been told to do. That's what everyone else is doing. That's what the crowd does. That's what's socially acceptable. We're not really thinking about what we want in our identity. We're just putting, again, oftentimes what our parents, want, what they said was best. We just go about our lives with little thought as to who we are, how we're showing up, and even if it's in the direction that we truly genuinely want to go and be in. A lot of our lives is formed and made up by what we've been told and what we're observing from other people, from social constructs such as patriarchy, misogyny, sexism, for the men especially out there that want to have interactions with women, ironically. It's ironic because you cannot expect to have good, healthy relationships and connection with women when you are pulling from a belief system and identity that requires you to mistreat women or see women as less than, okay? So that's why we want to talk about and focus, like, where are you getting the ideas that you have about yourself, your masculinity, and about other people, in this case, women and relationships, and how are you approaching, how is that affecting the way that you approach women's and relationship and how you even show up to those situations. So that's why this week's assignment is going to be for you to focus on identifying your current habits, who you are currently identifying as or who you've identified as in the past, so you can start to pay attention to those 1% instances, those 1% actions that have basically built and made you the person that you are right now, today. That's where we want to start. Because before we can start talking about the 1% that's good that you want to start to implement, you want to identify where you're at right now. And this is a simple exercise that you can do for yourself. You don't need to go out and buy anything. All you need is to find a quiet place and take some time to think about yourself and maybe even have a pen and paper to write things out. But you want to, like, if you want to get serious about like how you show up in relationships, you can really just start by taking inventory of yourself and how you're showing up, not putting yourself down. This is not an exercise where you put yourself down and, say, well, I'm not as good as this or I'm not doing this. You want to focus on how you are showing up right now. So that's going to be the basis of this first video, this first lesson, this first assignment. Is I want you guys to, again, take inventory, get a pen and paper, and just pay attention to the small little daily things, like the beliefs that you have and that you've been reinforcing day to day. So it could be as simple as maybe like going to the gym, and this is just a random example. But matter of fact, let's be more specific, okay? We're talking about relationships. So, and also about you dating. So I want you to take a piece of paper and pen and basically write down your thoughts on how you feel you show up when it comes to approaching women. How do you feel like about approaching women, talking to women, being in relationships? I want you to write that down. And I also want you to write down how you've responded in certain situations, particularly with conflict. Okay, whenever there was a disagreement or an argument, how did you respond to that? How did you show up? Then I want you to take inventory of the man that you are when you are single. Okay, what are your thoughts? Do you hate being single? Do you feel lonely? X, Y, and the third. Do you resent yourself? Do you not feel worthy? Be honest, okay? This is an exercise for you to be honest, because again, we're going to talk about how to actually, like the book says, unlearn the things that are not helping you, the things that are hindering you, and start to implement the positive things that are going to help you be more successful as you approach dating and women, and really overall to become a better person. Because again, this is about your life, this is about your identity, how you show up in life, not just for women in dating, but also for yourself. Because again, we're talking about lifestyle habits. We're not talking about attaining a goal of being in a relationship and maybe having a family. We're talking about lifestyle habits, lifestyle change, identity change. So yeah, go ahead and get started with this week's assignment. Feel free to comment below on some of the thoughts that you're having and maybe some of the questions that you might have on this week's assignment. And I'll see you guys in the next video.